Hi, this is Don Saito, the founder of ERP Efficiency Experts. Today we're going to go over accounting features in Business Central that is a dream for accountants. All right, so let's get started. Today's session we're going to be breaking up into different sections. So first we're going to talk about the basics of finance and accounting, some of the basic functionality. Then we're going to go into time savers, searching and filtering, and reporting, and control and security. So some of these topics may overlap a little bit, but we'll try to segregate them as closely as possible. If there's any features that you're already familiar with, you can just skip over those and move on to something that's more applicable to you. So let's start with the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is, of course, the heart of accounting, and let's take a quick look here. So if you notice, the chart of accounts here has a simple natural 5-digit number. You can make this number up to 20 digits long. I don't recommend that, of course. Try to keep it simple. If you notice, there are some sections that are in bold. Those are either headings, as you can see here under the account type, or they start a total, which is a begin total. If I move my mouse down here, I can see total assets, and I can see the value of the total assets, and you can see this end total, and this is telling me the row numbers that it is summing up to make that total. So it's really nice to have your chart of accounts laid out this way. That way when you're scrolling through it, you can quickly see your assets, your liabilities, equity, income statement, and so on. So it gives you a nice at-a-glance financial statement right on your screen. So it gives you a nice trial balance right on your screen. You have the net change and you have the balance, and you can drill down anytime you see a number with an underscore there. You can drill down by clicking into it and see the detail that makes up that number. The next feature I'm going to talk about is dimensions. Sometimes we'll come across a chart of account that has segmentation in it. For example, you might see 10100 and then a dash, then a segment, and a dash, another segment, and so on. It might look something similar to this. So here's an example of segmentation in the chart of accounts number. So we have an account number, then we have a department, and then we have a product line. Now this can be anything specific to your company, and how we would translate that in Business Central using dimensions is we would have our natural account number, so 4000, 4001, 3, and then we create a dimension 1 for department, and that's a separate table, so you're going to see that listed 1, 2, and 3 as our departments. And then we have another separate table of dimensions, and this one we could label product line, for example, and then we have 1, 2, and 3 a separate table. So rather than having a huge chart of accounts that's many pages long, you can streamline your chart of accounts with just natural numbers and using dimensions to keep track of the segmentation. Although I'm only showing 2 departments here, you can really have unlimited dimensions in Business Central. I would recommend not going too crazy though. Just because you have unlimited dimensions doesn't mean you should use unlimited dimensions. So I would stick to the few that you are interested in seeing on your financials and your financial reporting. The next topic I want to talk about is the data structure. What's the data structure of Business Central from an accounting point of view? We have what are called documents. These could be sales orders, purchase orders, transfer orders, and so on. And then we have journals. Those could be general journals. They could be item journals where you do inventory adjustment. They could be cash receipt journals. They could be payment journals, payments to vendors. There's all sorts of journals and there's all sorts of documents, but at the end of the day, it goes through a similar process as far as the data goes. If I take a document like a sales order and I post it and I ship it and then I invoice it, what's it going to do? Well, it's going to flow to my customer ledger to create an accounts receivable invoice. A copy of that invoice or shipment will be copied over to the posted sales shipment table and the posted sales invoice table. So you get 2 separate documents there, posted documents. And then you would also, if you're selling inventory items, you would also update the item ledger. And of course, anytime you're updating one of these subledgers, you're also automatically updating the general ledger. So all of that happens behind the scenes. From a user point of view, you don't really need to think about it. This just happens behind the scenes. The same thing would happen on the purchasing side. If I had a PO and I received it and I invoiced it, you're going to see a similar flow of data to the vendor ledger for the vendor invoice, the item ledger for the inventory, and a copy of the receipt, and a copy of the vendor's invoice, and of course our general ledger. And when you do general journals, that can also have an effect of going straight to your general ledger. For example, our general journals have a little bit more power, a little bit more flexibility, so you do have the capability for a general journal to hit more than one ledger. It could hit, for example, the customer ledger and the general ledger at the same time. Next feature is a relatively new feature called statistical accounts. What a statistical account is, it's an account that you can use to track statistics that are not necessarily financial related. For example, let's say I want to track the number of employees our company has, and I want to use that value in a calculation on my financial reports. That's where statistical accounts can be very helpful. So I can click New, for example, and I can give it a number, and then I can give it a name. For example, number of employees. That's how easy it is to create that statistical account, and now I can record a value into that account by using the statistical accounts journal. So by clicking on that, I have my posting date, I'll just change that to today. I have a document number, which is just any number to identify the transaction. I'll just say test, for example. Then I choose my statistical account, and I'll put in a value. I also have a description here where I can say something that I want. But I'll just go ahead and say we have 50 employees, and then I'll go ahead and register that. It's registered. Excellent. So now if I look at my statistical account here, you can see my balance is 50. I have 50 employees. I can also look at the statistical account balance. We'll change this to balance at date. And let's scroll down to, let's change this to month, for example. And we'll just scroll down. So we can see starting in February, we have 50 employees. If it were to increase at any point in time, we could make another statistical journal entry to increase or decrease. So the main purpose of this is I can combine this information, do calculations on my financial reports, which we're going to show a little later. Next is general journals. This is something that, of course, every accounting system must do, and it's really simple to do in Business Central. So I'm just going to show this very simple journal entry. So here's a journal entry that has already been entered into the system for me. It's got the posting dates, a document number, the account numbers, a description. You can put whatever you want in here, and then the amounts. Very simple. Once you're done entering that journal entry, what I like to do is I like to preview post it. This will tell you if there's any errors, and you can also see what the impact to the general ledger will be without actually posting it. Now we're getting a little error here. It says the posting date is not within your range of allowed posting dates. That's a very common error that we see, so we'll go ahead and take care of that. And this is part of the control that you have over the system. So here you can define the date range in which people can post to. So if anyone tries to post outside that range, they're going to get this error and they won't be able to do it. That's perfect for preventing people from posting in the periods that you don't want them to. I'm just going to go ahead and open this up just for the sake of testing, and we'll go ahead and try to post that again. All right, so preview posting is telling me it's making 3 journal entries, so I click on that. And I can view the results, what it would be if I did actually post it. You're going to find that preview posting in a ton of places in Business Central. Most of the documents and journals have that feature now, so you'll find that super helpful to take a look at what's going to happen without actually committing. Once you are ready to commit, you can go ahead and click the post button, and that will post the journal entry to the general ledger. Now we'll talk about time savers. These are features that are going to help you save time and make your life easier. The first one we'll go into is recurring journals. All right, to get into recurring journals, we're going to go into journals and recurring general journals. I'm going to go into the default batch, and then we'll go ahead and create a journal. Our recurring method, we'll choose variable, which will clear out the dollar amounts every time we post. Our recurring frequency tells us how often we're going to do this, once a month in this case. Put in today for the posting date, and I'll put in a document number, let's say it's recurring general journal 10,000, and then I will choose my GL account. So we can choose from our list, or we can type in what we're looking for. Let's go with accrued salaries and wages, and then I can put in my amount. And if you noticed here, there's an allocated amount, so we're going to go ahead and allocate this to another account. And I will just pick an account here. I'm going to allocate this by department. So I have 3 different departments here, and I'm going to allocate percentage of 33.33. And I'm going to repeat F8, copies from above. I'm going to choose a different department, and then 33.33%. F8 again, and I'll choose another department here, and 33.34. So you can see here at the very bottom, the total amount is $100 with a negative sign. That's perfect, so that balances this out completely. So I can continue entering my journal that way. That's one way to allocate by department, or I can just enter a straight journal down one line after another. You can also use this to do recurring invoices as well. If you're going to do that, I would do a separate batch for that. So if I wanted to do recurring invoices, I'll just say like vendor invoices, for example, and then that way I have a separate batch for vendor invoices and a separate one for general journals and so forth. So the technique is fairly similar. It occurs once a month. A few differences. I'm going to say invoice, and I will put in a document number here for the vendor invoice. Now this, we don't want to have the vendor invoice number here. This is an internal document number. So you can put whatever you want in here. It really doesn't matter. I like to keep it unique. All right, I've added external document number, which is what the vendor invoice number would be actually. So let's say the vendor's invoice number is 1234. Account type is going to be vendor. I'll choose my vendor, and then I'll go ahead and I'll put in my amount here. Now, if you notice, I put a negative sign in there. It's because the offset of that is going to be a debit to some expense account. So then I'm going to click on the allocated account, and I will choose an expense account here. Let's just go ahead and choose advertising expense. And then the allocation percentage, I'm going to just say 100%, and that'll fill in my amount there. So I can continue down the line and enter more vendor invoices, anything that's going to recur every single month. And then I can just come in here, I can change the amounts if I wish. Once I'm ready to post, I can go ahead and post that. That's going to increment the posting date to the next month and so on. All right, the next topic is correcting invoices. We never like to correct invoices. We want it all perfect the first time, but we make mistakes. Here's how you'd correct the mistakes very easily. So let's say I have a posted invoice out here, and I'm going to click into this. All right, so here's an invoice. If you notice, there's a correct button, and there's 3 different corrections, and this can be confusing. If you hover on top of it, it will tell you what it's going to do. The main thing is they all create credit memos, but these first 2 buttons also tries to post automatically, and I find that sometimes you'll run into an error and it won't work. I prefer this one. This one is the most reliable. It's going to create a credit memo for us. We can review it and then decide if we're going to post it ourselves. This one is the best one to use. I would just ignore these 2 for the most part and go ahead and create a corrective credit memo. There it goes. It created the credit memo, and I just want to point out a few things. One, it inserts a comment line here which references the original invoice number, which is very helpful, and it also references the original shipment number that the desk was shipped out on. Here's the quantity and the pricing. All of that will be exactly as the invoice. Now you can change this around. You can add a restocking fee. You can add a line. For example, if you have an item for a restocking fee, you can choose that. You can also change quantities. If there are multiple lines that were copied and you only want to credit one line, you can delete anything that you don't want. So that's why the Create Corrective Credit Memo is, I think, a preferred feature, because you can edit this before you actually commit to it. And again, it's the most reliable out of all of them. All right, let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and click Show More. If you notice, it automatically applied the credit memo to the invoice that we just clicked on. So this is very helpful. So when I post this credit memo, it's going to automatically apply to the invoice. If the invoice was already paid or closed by some other transaction, it will not fill in these 2 fields, and that credit memo will be posted as an open credit memo, which can be applied to something later. You can find this feature on the posted purchase invoice side as well. So it works on the AR side and on the AP side. So if I go to posted purchase invoice and bring up an invoice here, you can see we have the correct button with the same 3 features. Another great time saver is reversing a register. So let's go to General Ledger Registers. And the General Ledger Register is a complete running record of everything ever posted to the General Ledger. It numbers them sequentially. It has the creation date and the creation time. That can be different from your posting date, which can be backdated or it can be dated in the future, whereas the creation date, the creation time is the exact date and time that transaction was posted. You have the user ID and you have the source code, which tells you the type of transaction it is. Was it a sales transaction? Was it a general journal transaction? So the source code is going to give you a clue there. And then if you click the process button here, I'm going to click my push pin so this doesn't disappear. You have access to all the ledgers. So for example, this sales transaction, if you wanted to see what the general ledger impact was, you can click that and you can see the full general ledger. If you have specific entries that you want to reverse, you can reverse a specific transaction if you wish, or you can reverse the entire register. So if I go back to my registers here, you can reverse this entire register, for example. Now, some transactions cannot be reversed here. It will give you an error. Things like sales orders and sales invoices, those things cannot be reversed, but general journals can. So let's look for a general journal. So here's a general journal that I just posted. So if I wanted to reverse this, I am able to do that. So we'll go ahead and click reverse register. You can click the reverse button and go ahead and answer yes to that question. And it creates a new entry. So I'm going to resort this in descending order. You can see I have a new entry called reversal. And if I click process general ledger, I can see that it's reversed those entries for me. So very useful. The next feature is the ability to correct dimensions on a transaction. In the past, we had to reverse a transaction completely and redo it to be able to correct the dimension. Now you can actually correct the dimension on specific transactions, which is really nice. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on the correct dimension feature, but if you do need to correct dimensions, you can use this tool to create dimensions, add dimensions, change dimensions, and so on. Sometimes you want to find out what happened to an item and to be able to see the history on an item. Just like we have the GL registers, we also have something similar on the inventory side called item registers. So just like the general ledger register, we have a sequential number. We've got the creation date and time, user ID, and the type of transaction. And again, we can click the buttons up here to look at the various ledgers, whether the item ledger, we could see this was a sales shipment, and so on. So those are a few time savers within Business Central. There's one more I want to show you, which I think is super valuable for accountants, particularly if you wanted to correct a big journal entry. You can reverse it, but now you want to re-enter it again by scratch? No, you probably don't. So let's take a look at this feature. So let's go to journals, and then we're going to go to posted general journals. This is going to show me all of the posted general journals that have been done in the past. Now this feature does not turn on by default, so you have to turn this feature on before you start posting your journals to be able to see journals in this particular view. So to do that, we're going to go to General Journal Templates, and then I'm going to turn it on the general journal only here by clicking this Copy to Posted Journal Lines on. So if I've already checked this on, I wouldn't go overboard and do it on everything because it's going to make a record, a copy of every journal that you post. So it will take up more database space if you turn on this feature. So here we can see there's a journal entry that I've recorded. I'm going to go ahead and just show you the amounts here. The nice thing about this is I can take this information and I can create a new journal from it. So I could select these lines, and let's say I've made a mistake, I've reversed it. Now I want to go ahead and create a new journal. And let's say it's 50 lines, not just 2 lines, but 50 lines. Well, this is going to be a huge time saver. So you can copy the selected lines to a journal. So I'll go ahead and choose it, copy it to my general journal, the default batch. I can replace the posting date with today, and I can replace the document number with whatever I want. I'll just say correct journal, and then maybe put in the date or something like that. And then if I want to reverse the sign, I can do that if I wish. So it's created a general journal, and do I want to open it? Sure, let's take a look at it. So here it's created our journal entry for us from the posted general journals. So that's a great time saver, particularly if you're doing lots of journals and you're finding you have to correct them from time to time. That's a great way to do it. Okay, so that's all for the time savers. We're going to move on to the next category, which is searching and filtering. All right, you may have noticed that I use this little magnifying glass here to search for things. So a new feature is this used to only search for pages and reports and things of that nature. It didn't search data. So now you have a feature to search company data. So go ahead and click that. And now you can search for example, I know we have a desk called Athens desk. So I'm going to search for the word Athens. And then I can see everywhere in the system where that shows up. So I can see there's posted invoices, posted credit memos, posted purchase invoices. And I can click on any one of these and go to the actual transaction. So it's a very powerful way to search data now in the system. The next feature is called Find Entries. So this is a great way to isolate and find all the entries related to a particular transaction. So let's say I'm looking at a posted sales invoice, and I'll just bring this one up here. So I have a posted invoice. I want to know what is the impact to general ledger and any other ledger. So I can go ahead and click Process, Find Entries, and it is listing every single ledger entry that's affected. So number one is the copy of the invoice, which we have here. And then we have general ledger entries. There's 10 of those. There's 3 tax entries. There's a customer ledger entry. That's what the AR aging drives off of, as well as the detailed customer ledger entry. And then value entry contains cost, inventory cost information. So all of that is accessible to you simply by clicking on that number there, and you can go ahead and see all of that information. Now, another probably not as well-known feature is that you can actually search for find entries, and you can filter on a document number. So if you know the invoice number, if you know the posting date, you can put that in there, for example, like that. Or if the external document number would be, for example, a vendor invoice number, a customer PO number, you can put that in there, and then you can find using that feature here. And again, I'm going to find the same invoice and so on. So this is a really nice feature with Find Entries, is you can just put document numbers in there, but you can also use the search data function for that. So I would just say when you're coming in here, type in data, search company data, and then you can go ahead and just put in that, oh, I didn't copy that invoice number. And then I want to search for that using the data search. Just type in data, search company data, and then I'll put in that invoice number. And you're going to see everywhere in the system where that invoice number exists. This is the preferred way to search for data. Another feature is saving filtered lists. So this works pretty much on any list form like this, where you see a list of information. So it could be the general ledger data, it could be invoices, really anything that shows up like this. If you have a filter button, you click that, and then you can filter on various fields. Let's say I'm interested in, I want to see all the invoices for a particular customer. I want to save that view. So I could go ahead and choose to filter by customer number, and I want customer number 10,000, for example. And now I have a list of only invoices for customer 10,000, and I want to save that as a filter so I can refer back to it quickly. I'll click the disk icon here, and I'm going to call this invoices for customer 10,000, or I'll just put the name in here. That probably makes more sense. Adatum Corp, and press enter. Now I have a filter where I can see all invoices. I could see unpaid invoices, paid invoices, but also my new custom filter, invoices for Adatum. So imagine you can save a whole bunch of filters that you quickly want to access information for, and you don't have to remember how you filtered it. So super useful. You could use this to filter on open invoices. You could filter it on open invoices greater than a certain amount or lesser than a certain amount. So we'll go more into the different filtering options in just a moment. When it comes to filtering is very powerful, but you have to know how to use the tool. So for example, let's say I want to filter on due dates. Well, I can just click due date here. But I probably want to filter on a range of dates, not just one date or 2 dates. So how do you indicate a range? You go like this. Dot, dot, those are 2 periods in a row. So you can see it's now filtering on the range of the month of April. So how do you learn about all the different symbols and filter tricks? Because I could do amounts to, like I could do amount, and I can say greater than $200. Okay, or I could say lesser than $200, or I could say greater than or equal to $200. So you have all these different options with filtering. How do you learn what they are? Well, I'm going to just show you right here, and here's the link right here. And this is going to show you all of the different filter symbols that you can use. For example, dot dot is an interval, a range like I showed you. And then you have either or. I don't really like to call this or. I just want to pretend there's a comma in between these two numbers. It's 1200, comma 1300. So if I wanted to see customer 1200 and customer 1300, I would do this. Now this funny symbol here, this vertical bar, is called a pipe. If you're not a Linux developer, you probably don't know what that is. But that basically is, I would just pretend that's a comma. You could think of it that way. Okay, and how do you create this weird, funny vertical line on your keyboard? You're going to hold down the Shift key and press the backslash, not the forward slash, but the backslash. If you look at your keyboard on your key, you're going to see a vertical line above a slash, a diagonal that goes from left to right. Here's some other things. There's the less than or equal to. Have fun with this. Learn how to use these. Very powerful tools for filtering. All right, we're going to move on to a different category. This is the reporting category, so we're talking about reports from a financial point of view. Okay, so the next exciting feature here is the Analyze feature. So this allows you to do a pivot right within Business Central without having to go to Excel. So let's show you how this works. I'll start with chart of accounts, and I'm just going to drill down into the net change here. And let's filter on something interesting. Let's take a look at our income statement accounts. So I'm filtering on 40,000 and up. And then I'll also filter on a posting date range of 2019. So we'll do the whole year here. So now we can see the amounts per GL account for that date range. Now, if you notice over to the right, we have pivot mode. You can turn this on or off. I'm going to turn this on so we can create a little pivot here. Down here, you can see all the different columns that you can possibly have. And here's the rows. And then here's the values that we're looking at, for example, the amounts. And then down here we have columns. So what's nice about this is if there's a field here, for example, I'm interested in the general product posting group, which tells me the different types of products that we're selling. I can click on, I can just go ahead and drag and drop that down here to column labels. And now you can see I have my general product posting group up here. So it's breaking down my revenue here into retail revenue and then services. So you can have whatever you want here. This could be, for example, we have departments, we have a department code. So any of these fields here that you're using to track data, you'll be able to create a little pivot right out of the data, right out of the general ledger. Another cool thing is I'm going to go ahead and take the quarter. So I want to know what my revenue is per quarter. So what I'll do is I'll take this posting date quarter here, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight that, check that on. Notice as soon as I do that, there's a little collapsible arrow here that's expandable and collapsible. So now you can see we're breaking out the sales by quarter. So have fun with this pivot tool. I think it will really help you in analyzing data. The next feature is financial statements. So to get to those, we'll click on the Finance menu and go to Financial Reporting. This used to be called Account Schedules. I'm glad Microsoft changed the name because that was very not intuitive, but now it's very intuitive. So we'll go to Financial Reporting. And if you notice, there are some financial statements like a balance sheet and a cash flow statement, an income statement, a retained earnings statement. All of these start with the letter M. These will be updated automatically by the system using the account categories and subcategories that are defined on the chart of accounts. Don't bother trying to modify these reports because the system will override your modifications, and it'll give you a warning if you do. How does the system know that these are system updated? Well, that is stored in the general ledger setup, and if I scroll all the way down here to reporting, it says here financial report for balance sheet. So there's that report with the M for the balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, and retained earnings statement. So that's how the system knows to update these reports. That's how the system knows to update the reports. With that in mind, let's take a quick look at the account categories. So GL account categories. This shows you all of the categories and subcategories that are defined for each general ledger account. So this is how those statements are created through this action of the account categories and subcategories and how they're classified. You can also update those financial reports, the ones that start with the letter M, by clicking the Generate Financial Report button. And if you notice there's two options here, you can keep the existing financial reports and create new ones, or I can overwrite the existing financial reports and row definitions. All right, so let's go back to our financial reports and show you how these work. Let's say I want to print an income statement or look at it. I can go ahead and select it. And if you notice, there's a few options up here. You can edit the financial report, you can print it, or you can view it on screen. Let's go ahead and view it on screen. And here you have a number of options. For example, you can view by day, week, month, quarter, year, or the accounting period. So let's take a look at the year, and you notice the date filter will automatically change for us. Now you can go ahead and go to the period option here, and you can scroll through the various periods. So I clicked previous period here, and you can see the year changes there. So let's take a look at our financial statement. We see we have income, we have cost of goods sold, we have a gross profit, we have expenses, and then we have a net income. That's how you can view it on the screen. You also have different filters down here, so you can filter by department, customer group, and you can also do budgets and filter on those as well. The row definition here tells you what report you're using. So here we're doing the income statement, and then the columns, we're using a net change column. You can create your own columns. You can get really fancy with it, so you can have year-over-year comparisons, budget to actual comparisons, and so on. And it's very simple to create these column definitions. A few more things to note. You do have the Export to Excel option. You can create a new spreadsheet, or you can update an existing spreadsheet. The reason for this is if you have a bunch of graphs embedded in your Excel spreadsheet and you just want to update the data, this is very useful for that. As far as how to edit these financial statements and create new ones, that'll be a subject for a separate video. Now let's take a look at the other financial reports that are in the system. So if you notice on your menu all the way to the right here, we have all the reports. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And if you notice, we now have different subject matter here. So we have projects, we have purchasing. So if I'm looking for reports related to purchasing, I would come in here. We have all the finance reports laid out here, and you can see down here we have receivables, payables, and more down here. Resource reports, sales and marketing reports, HR reports, manufacturing reports. So I'm interested in finance because that's what we're talking about today. So you can see there's a number of reports that are in here. Now these numbers tell you how many reports are underneath this. It can be misleading because it looks like there's only 4 reports here when I click on that, but that's because a lot of these are expanded and there's reports underneath it. So you can expand all these little submenus here, and you'll see there's quite a few reports in here. For example, you can see there's a detailed trial balance. There's various versions of the trial balance that you can look at. There's budgeting reports and so on. As far as trial balance, you'll find the one that you like. I like the trial balance detailed summary report myself personally, but all of them will have a purpose. If you're looking for receivables reports, you can come down here, and it looks like there's only one, but then you expand this and you see, oh no, there's 27. So you can open that up and you'll see all the different receivable reports. There's quite a bit in there. Now you don't want to go through this menu tree every time to find a report, especially if you find something that you like. The thing to do is to bookmark it. So let's say I found a trial balance that I just love, and I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And then as soon as I have it opened, what I can do is click this little bookmark icon. And what that's going to do is if I go back to my menu, you'll notice it gets added to the right on this top line here. Highly recommend bookmarking all of the reports that you find that you like. All right, the last category that we're talking about today is control and security. Okay, these are important things for an accountant. So let's take a look at some of the features that are in here. First one is the general ledger setup. This is super important. You want to control who can post within what date range. Let's say whatever the month is, let's say it's February through February 28th. I don't want anybody to post outside of this range. this accomplishes that. It doesn't matter if the period is closed, it doesn't matter if the year is closed, none of that really matters. This is the main thing that controls and stops people from posting into 1946, and you don't want that. Now, you may have exceptions. For example, you may have an accountant, an AP clerk that is entering invoices that needs to enter into the prior period. So you can override this by user by going to user setup. So if I go to user setup, you can come in here, and I'm just going to choose myself, Don, and I will say, Don, he has the ability to post from January 31st through February 28th. This way we allow that person to post, catch up on some stuff in January, for example, and when that person is done, we recommend you come in here and just clear this out, and it will respect the general ledger setting, which is right here. A few other security points here is the sales invoice posting policy. People may have permission, for example, to post a sales order, but for example, a shipper will need to post a shipment for a sales order. But you don't want the shipper necessarily to be able to invoice that sales order. Well, what you can do is you can just prohibit that person from being able to post sales invoices. And same thing on the AP side. You may have people that are able to receive and post a PO, but you don't want them to invoice that PO and process that vendor invoice. So you can prohibit that, and you can do that per user. So these are some nice security features that are built into Business Central. This goes along with all of the standard security, of course. The last topic for today is changelog. What the changelog does is it allows you to track changes on specific tables. Now you want to be cautious with this because you don't want to turn it on for a bunch of tables, and what it'll do is it'll slow down your system and create a huge amount of data, and your database size will blow up rapidly very quickly. So you have to be very selective of how you use this. So let's go and show you how to do this. Changelog setup. So the first thing you're going to want to do is click that activate button here. So that's highlighted. And then I'm going to go ahead and click setup tables. And then I'm going to choose what tables that I want to track changes on. So for example, popular one that clients like to track is they want to track changes to certain fields on the PO. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. The first thing is find the table that you want to track changes on. Fortunately, most of the table names are obvious. For example, we can see customer, yeah, that's our customer table. Vendor, that's our vendor table. GL account and GL entry. So most of it's 100% intuitive here, or 99.9% intuitive. When it comes to the sales orders and purchase orders, you're going to see we have a sales header, a sales line, a purchase header, a purchase line. So then you can track the modification, the insertion, or the deletion. Now, what we don't recommend is coming in here and choosing all fields. That'll track changes on every single field in the table, and a lot of these tables have a ton of fields. That's going to create a huge amount of data, so don't do that. Choose some fields and then click the three buttons here and selectively pick the field you want to track. So I want to track, for example, if someone changes the vendor, I want to track, maybe that's all I care about on the header of the PO. So you decide what's important to you, and you can select on what you want to track. Let's take a look at the purchase lines now. Also, we're going to track some fields only, and then I've selectively chosen, I want the number, the item number, the location code, the unit of measure, the quantity, and direct unit cost. Those are the only fields I care about tracking, so I'm going to just select those. You can also track the logging of deletion. So if someone deletes a purchase order or deletes a purchase line, you, again, only track some fields and pick the fields you want to track. Deletion, I'm tracking the document type, whether it's an order or quote, credit memo, return, etc. Then the vendor number and the PO number. Those are the only things I care about tracking if someone deletes it. Now the username, the user ID, who did the transaction, who made the change, that's of course going to be tracked automatically. You don't have to choose that. It's going to track who did it and the date and the time. And same thing on the lines. What fields do you want to log when you delete a purchase line? Again, be very selective. Don't go crazy with the number of fields. So in summary, we hope we have given you some good information here that will make your accounting life easier. Hopefully we'll make some of your accounting dreams come true. This is Don Saito with ERP Efficiency Experts. We are a Microsoft Dynamics, Business Central, and NAV reseller. If you need help, if you need support with your Business Central, or you're interested in purchasing Business Central, please feel free to reach out to us. Our information is in the comments.